When the Chicago Bulls completed a signing trade to help send DeMar DeRozan to the Sacramento Kings, the Bulls got a package back that included 2 second-round picks and Chris Duarte. And with Chris Duarte's performance over in international play, it's left a lot of Bulls fans to ask, could Chris Duarte be an underrated acquisition by the Chicago Bulls? We're going to talk about it all and more right after this.
You are now tuned in to Chicago Bulls Central, your number one place for all Chicago Bulls news and content.
What's going on, Bulls fans? Welcome to another episode of Chicago Bulls Central, your number one spot for everything Chicago Bulls related. I'm the host there, Haize, but more importantly, you guys can follow the channel at Bulls Central Pod on every social media platform we happen to be on. With that being said, let's go ahead and get into it for today. So Chris Duarte is an interesting player. Coming into the league at a little bit of an older age, he ends up being a first-round pick, picked at number 13 by the Indiana Pacers. And with that, he ended up coming in there and earning all-rookie second-team honors after his rookie season, averaging 13 points per game, doing that on 43% shooting and 36.9% shooting from three, taking 4.5 three-pointers per game. He also chipped in 4 rebounds, 2 assists, and over a steal per game. And a lot of people thought, despite some of the injury concerns that he had, only playing 55 games in his rookie season, that this was going to be a nice building block for Chris Duarte to kind of come in and jump in and be a productive NBA player. But then the Indiana Pacers kind of changed their style of play in Chris Duarte's second year, and a style of play that he had to learn to adapt to and kind of find his place in. Chris Duarte, the Pacers adapted a style that everything kind of moved around a little bit more. The ball moved around more than what it did his rookie year, but he still was a player that found a way to be productive more towards the end of that season. Still generating and creating 64% of his shots were looked at as open shots that he generated. He could still get himself open. But despite in his second year taking a step back, only playing 46 games, only averaging 7.9 points per game, ended up that Chris Duarte was moved to the Sacramento Kings, and there in his third season, playing an even smaller role than what he did in either of his first 2 seasons with the Indiana Pacers, averaging only 3.9 points per game, playing 59 games, but only getting 12 minutes per game in that time and shooting the ball 34% from three-point range. Chris Duarte has been a player that has dealt with a lot of injuries over his NBA career, and you cannot take that away. But then you ask yourself, the question is, could Chris Duarte turn this around for the Chicago Bulls? And this has kind of been brought about a lot by seeing the clips and how he's played over internationally, which he's been playing really well. Chris Duarte over in FIBA has basically, through 3 games, averaged really good production. And you can't take that away from him of what he's been able to do, even in one game, going back and forth with Giannis Antetokounmpo, and just being a player that, despite whatever, he ends up turning into or things like that, but the international play seems to fit Chris Duarte's game extremely well, and you can't take away from any of that. But it still comes down to it. The question remains here. Coming to the Chicago Bulls, a team that is clearly in a place of going younger and maybe not being as good at competing as hard. Well, they'll still compete hard, but there's questions on exactly how productive are they going to end up being. And that's a fair question, I think, when it all comes down to it. But you got to ask yourself, Chris Duarte, who's had really averaging over 19 points per game over there in FIBA play through that tournament, through the 3 games there, having a really good efficiency rating on top of all of that, being one of the best players on that Dominican Republic team. On top of that, could Chris Duarte revamp his career here with the Chicago Bulls? And there's some reason to believe that he can, some reason to believe that he can't. Ultimately, he is a player that could end up being a two-way player for the Bulls. The Bulls are no stranger to having a player come in and kind of playing a good deal on the road. Now, Chris Duarte is going to have to earn whatever minutes he gets for the Chicago Bulls. There's no question about that. And with it being a team that still has Zach LaVine on it as of right now, and players looking at Chris Duarte as a wing player, you have players ahead of him on that wing position of Ayo Dosunmu, Kobe White, Zach LaVine, Matas Bucilis, and that's even to say if players like Dalen Terry don't step up and things like that. Chris Duarte is not going to be a player that comes in here and is expected to get a lot of minutes right away. But in training camp, if he can earn a role, things like that, he's got the 15th final roster spot for the Chicago Bulls. And for a team that still has questions on how healthy is Patrick Williams going to be, right? There's tons of questions around that. He's been a player that in his second year as well, to add to kind of the disappointment or kind of the weirdness around it, he went from being a player that played primarily at the 2 and at the 3 to playing a large portion of his minutes actually at the 4 his second year. Now, it goes back to that with the Kings playing more 2/3. You look at it, 73% of his minutes were at the 3 last season. So there's reason to believe that in him playing a more natural role in a team that is going to like to get out in transition, Chris Duarte, a player that does give effort on both sides of the ball, could he end up being somebody that could play a role for the Chicago Bulls? And I have my personal doubts, right? I won't lie to you. I don't see Chris Duarte as getting a whole lot of minutes here on the Chicago Bulls team, but that doesn't mean that there's not an opportunity there for him to carve something out for himself. This is a player that can stretch the floor, still over the course of his NBA career, hitting the 3 ball at 34.7%. We've already talked about his ability to still generate open looks for himself. They just have not gone in. And if Chris Duarte is finally ready to get over that injury hump, even at still being 27 years old, which he just turned 27 last month, he'll be 27 for the majority of his 4th year in the NBA, his first year with the Chicago Bulls. This is still a player that could theoretically have a long career ahead of him. It's just what level is that going to be at? So could Chris Duarte come in here and be somebody that we look back on and we say this was an underrated acquisition by the Chicago Bulls? I've learned myself not to count anybody out. I've just learned to do that. But for somebody who has always had a true shooting percentage around 50%, which is solid enough, his usage rate has gone down every single season from 20 his rookie year to 14.8 his 3rd year in the league, that first year with the Sacramento Kings. This is still a guy that does have some upside. And while encouragement does exist there by his play internationally, we know that the international game is a very different game than what it is in the NBA. He's able to play for a little bit more frequently at that international level. At being 6'5", a little over 200 pounds, what can Chris Duarte bring to the Chicago Bulls team? Well, a lot of Bulls fans are hoping that he's going to be able to do something. When you look at it, a lot of lower body injuries. Matter of fact, since October of 2022, he's had a total of 6 lower body injuries between his knee and his ankle. That is concerning, especially for a Chicago Bulls team that has already had players with lower body injuries. It's a bit of concern there, but he's still somebody that finds a way to be productive. And I'm not saying that Chris Duarte is going to get back to being what he looked like when he was all rookie second team, but we know that the NBA loves a comeback story, and the Chicago Bulls embrace players that fight, compete, and play hard. And he is somebody that can do that. So while I'm not expecting Chris Duarte in any stretch of the imagination to be this player that ends up being this huge value pickup that the Bulls fans are surprised by, there's a chance that Chris Duarte could be much better than what the numbers will tell you, but he's going to have to be able to stay healthy. Let me know what you guys think down below as far as Chris Duarte. Do you guys think that he is going to be able to kind of revamp his career here with the Chicago Bulls? Is he going to be somebody that could come in, play a role, give some energy and some defense, some two-way play off that bench? And then do you think how hard is it going to be? How many players are going to be ahead of Chris Duarte coming into the season that he would have to pass up on the depth chart to get some minutes? Let me know what you guys think on all that down below. Also, let me know what you guys think on these quick kind of late night videos. We call them nightlies here because I post daily content, but let me know what you guys think on kind of this more quicker, fast-paced, one-topic kind of videos, because I can look to do that a little bit more. But, guys, make sure you guys are following us at Bulls Central Pod. You can send us any feedback, questions, comments, concerns, bullscentralpod@gmail.com. Lastly, if you want to leave a text message and our voicemail for the mailbag, the number to do so, 773-270-2799. We are the #1 spot for everything Chicago Bulls related. That's thanks to you guys. And like I like to end every episode on, go Bulls. Love you guys. See red if you can, y'all. Peace.
This has been a presentation of the Break Media.